per the earlier one, we're doing recording on this. So that will be made available along with the GoToWebinar recording. That will be made available with slides after the event's closed. So this session is really around the offshore package and all the related stuff, some of which is at the ports, but essentially it's the offshore construction package that we'll be talking about. So I think we'll just crack on. So just in terms of, there is a Q&A once Peter has done his presentation, there'll be a Q&A session, and we'll certainly invite questions through the chat function, and I'll be able to moderate the questions towards the end of the session. But if you can keep yourselves on mute, please. I can drive some of it from here. To send your questions through on the chat function, and I will moderate that at the end of the session when Peter's done his piece. So we'll just crack on. So Peter, have we still got you? Yeah, I think we've still got you.
Roger, do you want me to present the slides I have?
I think you've got slides. You're very faint at the moment, so
I've got slides here to present. I don't know. You're
Perfect.
Presenting your screen, so maybe if you stop presenting.
Am I presenting?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Mark, you could step off.
Okay, good. You can see the screen?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail about the offshore aspects of the construction phase procurement. There's separate sessions ongoing on the onshore construction and operations and maintenance phase of the project. So I'm going to get into a bit more detail about the kind of more particular technical aspects of the offshore package and what we're doing on Moray West, which is maybe a bit novel and a bit innovative compared to maybe some other projects. So this is again a slides we put up earlier on, just on the headline contracting strategy and the breakdown of the scopes that we're going to allocate within the supply chain. The aspects of the scope covered here are kind of highlighted. So turbines, array cables, substructures, the offshore substation and the offshore export cable, and then around that there's all the ancillary scopes that we would contract directly, such as ports, offshore survey works, some site preparation, and then engineering and design scopes as well. So just an overview of what we have consent from Marine Scotland to build and the design envelope that we're working within. We have planning consent for up to 85 wind turbines. We're limited largely in the capacity of the wind farm more by the grid connection in reality than by the number of turbines. So you'll know that the turbine capacity is increasing, but we expect that we might end up with as few as 60 to 70 wind turbines in the end, which is, and a limiting factor would be our grid connection, which is around 800 to 850 megawatts at present. There's quite a range of water depths across the site. The kind of shallowest extent of the wind farm in the south is around 35 meters. We get to, sorry, in the north part of the site, in the northeast part of the site is as little as 35, but we go down to water depths as deep as 55 meters, which compared to maybe some of the wind farms certainly down on the east coast of England, is quite deep. There's other wind farms, a lot of the earlier wind farms are typically 20 to 30 meters water depth. So we are in fairly deep conditions here. As I've already mentioned, we're looking to take advantage of the latest advances in wind turbine technology, and in particular with wind turbines. So we're looking at 12 megawatt plus wind turbines with rotor diameters up to 230 meters is what's currently allowed for within our planning consent. So that's one of the, I guess, most significant advances in the technology for offshore wind in recent years. On Moray East, for example, we were using a 164 meter rotor diameter in-valve turbines, so they were 10 megawatts. So it's really a huge pace of innovation that's going on with the turbine technology. We're also looking at monopiles potentially being feasible even with larger turbines. We were in our previous projects using three-leg jacket foundations, so that's something we see as a potential design innovation for this project. In terms of the transmission infrastructure, it'll be built around 2 circuits, more likely with 2 substation topsides, but there is still the potential to have a single topside in the wind farm. The export cable route is around 50 kilometres offshore, and the landfall is on the Moray coastline at a site called Broadcraig is our base case landfall location at the moment, near Inverboindy. Adam's mentioned before, assuming we pass the different hurdles we have at the moment with the route to market, we'd expect to start manufacturing of components during 2022, following our financial close. This will continue through 2023, with component parts reaching kind of local ports in the second half of 2023, and offshore construction taking place throughout 2023 and 2024. So that's broadly the timeline that we're working to at the moment with our procurement activity. Here we've just got a bit more about how we've structured the procurement. So turbines we're tendering separately to OEMs and to installation contractors. Similarly, for foundations for monopiles based on our own in-house design that we've contracted, so that's making progress. Array cables we're tendering as a supply and installation wrap. The offshore substation topsides we're out to market currently just for that as a direct contract award for the supply of the offshore substation topside. We'd expect installation to be done under a separate contract. And then for the offshore export cables, that's being tendered as a supply and installation contract. In addition to that, for the construction phase, there's a whole host of contracts that we would expect to award directly ourselves. So site investigation, post-financial close for geotechnical, geophysical, and also contracts for kind of third-party support, QA/QC, ground modelling work, and just general consultancy would be a whole range of contracts that we would award directly ourselves. Similarly, site preparation is quite a large scope for projects like these, particularly with the complex soil conditions. There's a lot of boulder clearance work along in the wind farm and along the export cable route that we've awarded directly in the past, and we would expect to do the same again for Moray West. UXO clearance is quite a significant scope. The site sits within a former MOD trial kind of area, so UXO is a bit of a topic for us. Then general construction management services is another big scope. So that includes aspects of marine coordination, which for Moray East is being done out of an office in Fraserburgh. The location of that for Moray West is still to be determined. Ports and harbours is another aspect of the project that we would directly award ourselves. We've got strong connections in the Cromarty Firth. We're developing the Fraserburgh Harbour for our O&M phase for Moray East as well, so there's a lot of work to be done there. And then other, significant amount of sort of man-hour contracts in client ripping, marine warranty surveyors, ecological clerks of works, QAQC, site representation, are all sort of contracted out scopes that we would award directly ourselves. In the short term, in the development phase, so through this year and next year, there are a number of contract awards that would be advertising for design support, either for structural issues, marine aspects of the work, and electrical system design. So there's a range of contracts that will be out in the market for in the next year to 18 months on that part. Similarly, for the site investigation, we'll be doing more on-site work next year, pre-financial close, to inform project engineering. And also, I've mentioned before, the discharge of a consent conditions requires quite a bit of kind of external consultancy that we will need to be doing. Here, just I guess some nice images of just to demonstrate our reliance on the supply chain for developing really complex aspects of the work. So on the top left, some recent pictures on Moray East of jackets undergoing final handling and logistics at Nig in the Cromarty Firth. That's actually a picture from the last probably month or so. There's also, I think you can see if you squint a bit, there's one of the offshore substation topsides alongside at the port there as well. So local logistics has been key. The bottom picture actually shows the redevelopment of Invergordon, along with the storage of pin piles for the installation of foundations there. So that was all parallel works earlier on. I think that would be maybe actually last summer. So the redevelopment of Invergordon has been critical for the project, and we've been working closely with the port there and HIE to see that work being undertaken. It's that's been a big benefit, not just for Moray East, but potentially for Moray West and future offshore wind development in Scotland. So it's been good for us to be a part of that redevelopment. Also a picture of the offshore export cable landfall. We've had some local contract awards for things like boulder clearance for that scope, and a lot of the supply chain strength comes from Scotland and the UK for that part of the scope. So that's all been progressing well and is more or less completed scope now for the project. So finally, just before we get into the Q&A, just a reminder of what we put up earlier of the different channels for supply chain engagement. Obviously, as we've kind of emphasised, I think a lot through the presentation, the number of contract awards that we make is a small fraction of everything that is done as part of the project. So these channels are really important to register with, in addition to, I guess, directly reaching out to us. And then we work closely with our tier 1 contractors to make sure that they're fully aware and fully engaging with all parts of the supply chain for the different contractors who are relevant to the scopes that they're responsible for. So I think that's everything on the presentation side. I want to give as much time as possible to hear your questions and try and answer as much as we can. So yeah, Roger, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for that. So I think we've got Chris on as a presenter as well. Mark, I think if you could step out of video, that Mark Bowden, I think you've just joined, if you can switch off your video. So there's just on the toolbar, the sort of lower part of the screen, there's a little camera icon. If you can click on that, it'll turn your video off. Okay, well, Mark's with us at the moment, but Mark's not a presenter. So Mark, if you're able to switch off your video, that would be great. So we've had a number of questions coming through on the chat already. So I'll drive the questions from here and try and take a selection, but I'll try and deal with new questions as they come, so keep them coming. So we've got Chris, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. So everybody that's on this session may not have seen you on the earlier call. So if you can give a quick intro, and then I'll come back onto the first question.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Chris McKeown. I'm the transmission package manager for Moray West. I'm currently responsible for all the electrical related packages, offshore and onshore. So happy to help where I can. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So maybe one of the first questions is around sort of the links again with Moray East. So we touched on that previously, Peter, but something that was kind of people are asking a bit about, well, what if that happened on Moray East, is it going to happen on Moray West? So the question was around the turbines and the installation of turbines, whether that was done as the total package for that tier one, and if it was done like that in Moray East, is that inevitably going to be the case on Moray West, or might you split up that T&I part of the turbine package?
Yeah, so on Moray East, we're having turbines supplied by Mitsubishi Vestas MVAL. They are responsible for subcontracting the installation of wind turbines on Moray East. On Moray West, at the moment, we're out to tender with the major OEMs, and I think probably everyone knows who they are. We're also separately tendering the transport installation. So at the moment, we see them as being separate contract awards, and also a separate contract award for kind of intermediate marshalling of components for turbines as well. So on Moray East, we're using Invergordon for that scope this summer and through next year, and we'll be looking for a similar setup for Moray West with most likely a east coast of Scotland port. For whichever turbine supplier we're using, whichever installation contractor we end up with.
Yeah, so I think that addresses it, but maybe just to flesh that out a little bit more, there's been questions about the port selection, but it sounds like the project's not quite at that stage yet, but it's not inevitably going to use Invergordon again.
There's the selection of ports for kind of CTV bases, for the O&M phase, for the construction phase. We end up using a whole range of local facilities, and that decision about how to manage the logistics for the project really depends on the technological solutions that we're using and who the suppliers are. So all of those decisions will be taken next year. I think the facilities that are available in the north of Scotland are pretty well known. So yeah, that's just something that will pan out as we select a lot of the tier one contractors and we figure out what ports are most appropriate for the timeline of the construction that we're working to.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
I mean, some of these contractors will have their own opinions as well that they'll want to put forward. So yeah, I mean, there's a bit of negotiation to be done, I think, over the next 12 months or so. See what's best options.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So one very specific thing, but it does help to sort of tease out just how detailed the project contracting may be, but it was around corrosion protection and whether, so the jacket supplier or monopile supplier might provide that bit of steel, but are they expected to do corrosion protection as well, or is that going to be something that we'll probably control that and decide how we want to do corrosion protection?
We'll have quite a big influence on the specification of coating and painting and corrosion protection, but ultimately the works will be executed as part of the fabrication contract. So we're working with the designer at the moment to define the scope, and I guess there's an opportunity now for supply chain to influence the design solution that we specify. But once that specification has been made, which will be in the next 6 to 9 months, we'll pass the responsibility for executing that work to the fabricator, and they may well subcontract large elements of that scope.
Sure. Okay, and I think there's just a few questions about the substructures still. So it's maybe going over the ground you've covered previously, but if you as clear as you can be about where we are on substructures and whether it's likely to follow the Moray East jacket solution or it's likely to be something else, or where we are on the substructures.
Yeah, I can maybe say something about the turbine foundation scope, and Chris can add something on the substation foundations. So on Moray East, we the solution we finished with in the end was pre-piled 3-leg jackets. I think for the water depths up to 55 meters. At the time we were engineering that project, that was really the for us the best solution. The foundation sort of design has really matured quite a lot, and we're trying to see now, even despite sort of similarly deep water depths, if we can make monopiles work for Moray West. We think it's potentially possible. You know, we started to get to very, very large diameter monopiles, which is complex from a fabrication and an installation point of view, but we think it's potentially feasible. In terms of what that means for the supply chain, we're doing as much work as we can and with kind of other developers in the industry to try and increase local capability for fabrication of monopiles and transition pieces. So we think there's going to be opportunities for different fabrication yards throughout the UK to try and get into the monopile fabrication scope, which is, I think we would definitely say has been dominated by European fabrication yards to date. But I think it's, you know, you've not seen monopiles go to low-cost fabrication regions in the Far East or the Middle East. So monopiles, we still think, because there's a large amount of automation and it's maybe from a heavier kind of innovation angle, it's definitely the Northern European dominated market. So I think the UK really has a chance to have more suppliers in that space.
Great.
So,
Chris, do you want to?
But yeah, Chris will say something about the substation scope, because we're in a similar deliberation at the moment about the concept to be using for the substations.
Yeah, I mean, for the substations, I don't think it's any secret that the industry is sort of moving away from the larger sort of more oil and gas platform type substations to smaller, lightweight substations. So from Moray West's point of view, we are keen to explore different options, be it monopiles, jackets, a cost-effective solution for a lightweight platform. So we're currently going through feasibility options for that design, and with it being a more lightweight structure, there's with the procurement, there's hopefully some synergies that can be had between the turbine foundations and the substation foundation. So that's something we'd be keen to explore.
Okay. One sort of specific thing around the sort of T&I. So it's interesting that the project's looking to sort of break things out, possibly a bit more than was done on Moray East, and take a bit more direct control of some of the packages potentially. So on the T&I package, it sounds like that's going or gone to market. What's the potential for any new suppliers who think they've got capability to get involved in the T&I scopes?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of questions in the chat about that. There's definitely opportunities for contractors who've got equipment that's able to handle what's going to be up to 2,000 ton structures, handle a lot of structures at the same time with their equipment. So it would require some serious vessel capability to install the types of structures that we're looking at for foundations and turbines. But yeah, we're open to new entrants where they've got the appropriate vessel capability, really. Okay,
so I think we can see that on the chat where that's coming from. But the broader point, I suppose, is so if somebody thinks that they can do something that we're talking about, I don't know if you kind of want to rehearse that bit about how do supply chain kind of come to us? How do we find them, and what are they best to do to make sure that they're on our radar?
Well, actually, I'm seeing Eddie's question. I think actually he's sort of been in touch before, so I think we could have a direct conversation about T&I scope, because that would be something that we would be contracting directly. We're obviously interested to hear from anybody directly as well, even if they think they're probably somewhere further down in the contracting structure. But there's also the engagement channels that we've put up on the presentation before. So you know, we want to hear from people as much as possible, and try and set up as many calls as we can to discuss the scopes that are available.
Okay, that's useful. Thanks. So I think on this, I noticed somewhere else, somebody's saying that they're having difficulty registering on the website, which is a shame. But we would encourage people to register. So I've heard that from somebody else, and one of the problems was on the kind of caching on their browser. So it was refreshing the browser, and then that seemed to allow people back in. But I can't remember if it's on the end of your slide deck, Peter, but if there's the sort of office numbers and the generic email, then if you're still having problems, then we'll try and address that. And I can see who's noted the difficulty of registration previously. But I've been in, and certainly we're getting people who are registering on the form on our project website. So it's certainly possible. So I think clearing the browser cache and starting again is one way in. The other thing I'd seen before was about the construction timelines. Now, I know you sort of touched on that earlier, and I just wondered if there's any more detail you could say about, once you financial close, we're past that point, is there a bit more detail about how you'd expect the construction phase to operate?
Yes, so we're trying to do as much of the offshore works during the summer period as possible. Depending on the scope, some operations are more weather sensitive than others. Assuming we reach financial close against the target of kind of the first half of 2022, the commencement of offshore works would be around mid-2023, with foundations being the first things to be installed offshore. That would be expected to run through probably the remainder of 2023, and also the installation of the offshore transmission work, so substations, cables. And then from that point on, we have the grid connection available to us from early 2024, and then we would install turbines through the first half, probably through the majority of 2024. We'd be looking to have first power from the wind farm around Q2 2024, and the final complete commissioning of the wind farm by the end of 2024. So that's the current program, but that has the potential to move to the right, as any project does. Things like route to market, and the impact of the CFD auction timing on that can move things. But at the moment, that's what we think is a best guess on where we're going.
Great. Okay. Hopefully that's a bit more useful about the kind of granularity about the construction phase there. So we're almost out of time there, but there had been a question earlier about cable install, and clearly that'll be likely to be a tier 1 sort of contract. But whether there's, Chris, you talked about it a bit before, but whether there's opportunities for bringing in suppliers or ensuring that suppliers related to cable install, inter-array is maybe as well as the main export cable, but whether there's ways of bringing in suppliers that are linked to those sort of packages.
Yeah, well, the cables are being tendered as EPCI, so it's full wrap. So there is opportunities to support the EPCI in things like Peter mentioned, like survey works, boulder clearances, UXOs, support vessels for all the offshore marine activities. These are things that could be, we're looking for the supply chain to support us with in that regard, and then other more practical works for including the actual determinations and the cable pulling, and then also for the landfall as well, where it's very important where the cable comes onto land. We saw Nicholas Skeen on earlier, where there will almost definitely be horizontal directional drilling required at our landfall location. So that is a major activity as well, to in the interface between offshore and onshore, which we'll need a lot of support for. So again, we'd look for the supply chain to support us in that.
Great. Okay, super, thanks. So that's us out of time. I'm sure plenty of people have got 12 o'clock meetings that they'll be heading off to, but we've had sort of 90 on the call, so thank you very much everybody who's joined us, and hopefully that has been useful. So as I said before, the recording and the slides will be available later, coming out through Hi, and we thank them for their help in setting up the earlier session and helping us get this all running smoothly. So I don't think so. The questions that are left on chat, there's a few there that we probably haven't fully addressed. We'll just be able to try and take those off the chat and address you directly. And yes, thank you very much. And we do hope very much that we'll be working with you in the coming months and years as we move on to ultimately deliver the Moray West project. So I don't know, Peter, if you've got any other closing comments about procurement before we close fully.
No, I mean, I think it's mainly, first of all, thanks for everybody for taking the time to listen to what we're doing, and I guess hopefully at some point get a chance to speak to as many of you as possible in person, hopefully face to face at one day. But yeah, I think things are going to move hopefully pretty quickly for the project in the next 12 to 18 months. So we're really in the there's a window of opportunity now for as many people as possible to reach out to the project through all the channels that we've laid out. And yeah, I guess best of luck with trying to get involved with our project and any others in offshore wind that you're tendering for. So thanks very much.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'll close the session now. Thank you.